Imagine holding a simple slice of bread in your hands. It feels ordinary, something you've probably eaten hundreds of times without a second thought. But hidden inside that soft loaf is a story that began thousands of years ago, long before cities, kingdoms, or even written language existed. Every bite carries a piece of human history. Welcome to Everyday Origins, where ordinary things reveal extraordinary stories. Every object around us has a hidden past waiting to be discovered. Today, we'll uncover the surprising history behind something millions of people eat every day: bread. Look closely at the bread. Tiny holes fill every slice, creating a delicate pattern that most people never notice. They seem so natural that we rarely ask where they came from. Yet, those small spaces are not random. They are silent clues left behind by an extraordinary process that transformed one of humanity's oldest foods. Tonight, we're traveling back to the very beginning, not to a famous battle or a great empire, but to the humble origins of bread itself. By the end of this journey, you'll never look at a loaf of bread the same way again. Sometimes, the greatest stories are hiding in the most ordinary things. Bread has been part of human life for thousands of years. Today, it's found on breakfast tables, in school lunches, and in restaurants around the world. So common, in fact, that most of us never stop to wonder how this everyday food first came to exist. But if we could travel back to the very beginning, we'd discover that the first bread looked nothing like the soft, airy loaf we know today. It had no golden crust, no fluffy texture, and certainly none of the tiny holes hidden inside each slice. To uncover the true origin of bread, we must journey more than 14,000 years into the past. Long before cities, farms, or written history, it all began with a handful of wild grains and one simple human idea. Around 14,000 years ago, long before farming began, small groups of hunter-gatherers wandered across the lands of the Fertile Crescent. They followed the seasons, hunted wild animals, and gathered edible plants. Among those plants grew wild grasses with tiny seeds that would quietly change human history forever. These seeds were difficult to collect. Each stalk produced only a small amount, and gathering enough to feed a family took patience and countless hours. Yet people returned to them again and again, because they discovered the seeds were nutritious, filling, and could be stored much longer than fresh fruits or meat. No one could have imagined that these humble grains would one day become wheat, the foundation of bread, agriculture, and entire civilizations. At that moment, they were simply another gift from nature, waiting for curious hands to discover their true potential. Life was unpredictable for these early hunter-gatherers. Some days, they returned with meat after a successful hunt. On other days, they came home empty-handed. Wild grains became a dependable source of food, offering something valuable when hunting failed. They were small, but they could help families survive through difficult seasons. Collecting the grains was only the first challenge. Their hard outer shells made them difficult to eat, and chewing them raw was slow and uncomfortable. Early humans needed a better way to unlock the nutrition hidden inside these tiny seeds. That search for a simpler meal would lead to an important discovery. Using smooth stones found near rivers, people began crushing the grains into a coarse powder. Mixed with a little water, it became a thick paste that could be cooked over hot stones or glowing embers. It was a simple recipe, yet it marked the first step toward the bread we know today. The mixture was simple, just crushed grains and water. Shaped by hand into a flat, round cake, it was placed directly onto a heated stone beside the fire. There were no ovens, no recipes, and no professional bakers. Yet this humble meal would become the ancestor of nearly every loaf of bread baked today. The result was nothing like modern bread. It was thin, dry, and dense, with a rough texture that required slow chewing. There was no soft center, no crispy golden crust, and certainly no tiny holes. But for early humans, it was nourishing, portable, and far easier to store than fresh food. For thousands of years, this simple flatbread changed very little. Generation after generation prepared it the same way, never imagining that one accidental discovery would completely transform bread forever. And like many of history's greatest inventions, it began with something that was never planned. For thousands of years, bread remained almost unchanged. Across different regions, people continued mixing crushed grains with water and baking the dough on hot stones or in warm ashes. It was practical, filling, and dependable, but it lacked the light, airy texture we enjoy today. Then, sometime around 5,000 years ago, in ancient Egypt, something unusual happened. A bowl of dough was likely left sitting longer than expected. Instead of spoiling, it slowly began to swell. Tiny bubbles appeared inside, and the dough mysteriously grew larger, all by itself. No one understood what caused it. There were no microscopes and no knowledge of microorganisms. To the bakers, it must have seemed almost magical. But that simple accident would become one of the greatest discoveries in the history of food, and the beginning of risen bread. What those ancient bakers witnessed was the work of something far too small for the human eye to see. Tiny single-celled organisms called yeast had quietly landed on the dough from the surrounding air. Without anyone realizing it, nature had begun transforming a simple mixture of flour and water. As the yeast fed on the natural sugars inside the grain, it released carbon dioxide gas. Millions of microscopic bubbles slowly formed throughout the dough, gently stretching it from the inside. What looked like magic was actually one of nature's oldest biological processes: fermentation. The longer the dough rested, the more bubbles appeared. It became lighter, softer, and larger than any bread people had ever seen before. That invisible partnership between humans and yeast would eventually change baking forever, creating the fluffy bread we enjoy today. Curious bakers decided to bake the risen dough instead of throwing it away. As the heat reached the tiny pockets of trapped gas, each bubble expanded like a miniature balloon. The dough stretched from within before its outer surface hardened, locking the new shape permanently into place. When the bread finally came out of the oven, it was unlike anything people had tasted before. It was lighter, softer, and easier to chew. Instead of a dense, solid texture, the inside was filled with tiny air pockets, the very holes we still see in bread today. What seemed like an accident quickly became a treasured technique. Bakers began saving a small piece of fermented dough to mix into the next batch, repeating the process again and again. Without knowing it, they had created one of humanity's oldest baking traditions, the sourdough starter. From Egypt, the secret of risen bread slowly spread across the ancient world. Traders carried more than grain and pottery. They carried knowledge. As people traveled along rivers, deserts, and sea routes, they shared baking techniques that transformed bread from a simple survival food into a cherished part of daily life. The Greeks admired Egyptian bakers and refined their methods. Later, the Romans expanded bread making on an entirely new scale, building public bakeries equipped with large stone mills and massive ovens. Fresh bread became an essential food for growing cities and a symbol of civilization itself. Although recipes evolved from one culture to another, one invisible helper remained unchanged. Every loaf still depended on the same tiny yeast cells, quietly producing bubbles that made bread soft and light. The secret, discovered thousands of years earlier, continued to shape every new generation of bakers. Centuries passed, and bakers slowly discovered that not all bread looked the same inside. Some loaves had large, open holes, while others were filled with tiny, even air pockets. Although they couldn't explain why, they realized that every loaf told the story of how it had been mixed, rested, and baked. Today, bakers call this inner pattern the **crumb****. To most people, it's simply the inside of a loaf. But to an experienced baker, the crumb is like a fingerprint. It reveals how active the yeast was, how long the dough fermented, and whether the bread was baked at just the right moment. Those tiny holes are not empty mistakes or random imperfections. They are the lasting footprints of millions of microscopic bubbles that once existed inside the dough. Every slice of bread carries the hidden record of an invisible transformation that began thousands of years ago and still happens every single day. If you've ever compared different types of bread, you've probably noticed that no two loaves look exactly alike inside. A sandwich loaf is filled with tiny, uniform holes, while a rustic sourdough often reveals large, irregular pockets. Why does the same ingredient create such different patterns? The answer begins with a remarkable protein hidden inside wheat flour called gluten. It doesn't look special when the flour is dry, but the moment water is added and the dough is mixed, millions of gluten proteins begin linking together, forming a flexible network throughout the dough. Think of gluten as an invisible web. As yeast produces carbon dioxide, this web stretches in every direction, trapping the tiny bubbles instead of letting them escape. Without gluten, bread would stay flat dense and crumbly, much like the first breads made thousands of years ago. As the dough rests, the yeast continues producing carbon dioxide. Each tiny bubble pushes gently against the gluten network, stretching it little by little. The stronger and more elastic the gluten becomes, the more gas it can safely hold without breaking apart. Imagine blowing air into hundreds of tiny balloons trapped inside a soft net. Some balloons stay small, while others slowly grow larger as neighboring bubbles merge together. This is exactly what happens inside rising dough, long before it enters the oven. Every loaf is a balance between yeast creating gas and gluten holding it in place. Too little gluten and the bubbles escape. Too much and the dough becomes tight and dense. Perfect bread is born from this delicate partnership between strength and flexibility. Have you ever wondered why sourdough often has large, dramatic holes, while sandwich bread looks smooth and uniform? The answer isn't just the recipe. It's a combination of time, moisture, and the way the dough is handled before it ever reaches the oven. Sourdough usually contains more water and ferments much longer. During that extra time, the gluten network slowly relaxes while tiny gas bubbles continue growing and joining together. The result is a loaf with beautiful open pockets that many artisan bakers proudly seek. Sandwich bread follows a different path. Its dough is mixed longer and shaped more firmly, creating thousands of smaller, evenly distributed bubbles. That produces a soft, fine crumb perfect for holding butter, peanut butter, or jam without falling apart. Temperature also plays a surprisingly important role. Yeast is alive, and, like all living organisms, it works faster in warm conditions and much more slowly in the cold. Even a small change in temperature can completely transform the texture hidden inside a loaf of bread. When dough rises slowly in a cool environment, the yeast has more time to create flavor, while the gluten gradually strengthens around the growing bubbles. This patient process often produces bread with deeper taste and larger, more beautiful air pockets. But if the dough rises too quickly, the bubbles stay small and the bread develops a tighter crumb. That's why many artisan bakers believe that great bread cannot be rushed. Sometimes, the secret ingredient isn't flour or yeast. It's simply time. The moment the dough enters a hot oven, everything happens at once. The trapped carbon dioxide expands rapidly as the temperature rises. Water inside the dough turns into steam, creating even more pressure from within. For a few brief minutes, the loaf experiences its final dramatic growth. Bakers call this stage oven spring ****. It's the last burst of expansion before the crust begins to harden. Once the outer surface sets, the bubbles can no longer grow. Every air pocket becomes permanently frozen in place, preserving the loaf's unique internal pattern. Those tiny holes you see after slicing fresh bread are actually the empty spaces left behind by gas and steam. The bubbles disappear, but their shapes remain forever inside the loaf. Every slice is like a snapshot of the exact moment the bread finished baking. Here's something surprising. Those tiny holes inside bread are actually empty spaces. They aren't made of flour, water, or yeast. They are the places where carbon dioxide gas and steam once existed. By the time the bread cools, the gas has escaped, but its shape remains forever. Imagine filling a balloon with air and then carefully removing the balloon while leaving the space behind. That's essentially what happens inside a loaf of bread. The bubbles disappear, but the walls of baked dough remain, preserving a delicate network of tiny chambers. In other words, every slice of bread is a fossil of invisible bubbles. What you're really looking at isn't missing bread, it's the permanent imprint of millions of tiny pockets of gas that once expanded inside the dough during baking. Not every hole inside bread is the same size. Some remain tiny, while others grow surprisingly large. This happens because the bubbles inside the dough are constantly moving, expanding, and sometimes joining together. The loaf is alive with change, long before it reaches the oven. As neighboring bubbles press against one another, the thin walls separating them can occasionally break. When that happens, two small bubbles merge into one larger pocket of gas. This natural process explains why artisan breads often display beautiful, irregular openings throughout the crumb. Professional bakers watch this transformation carefully. If too many bubbles merge, the bread can lose its structure. If none merge at all, the loaf may become dense and heavy. Great bread is the result of finding the perfect balance between growth, strength, and timing. Modern science has revealed something astonishing. A single teaspoon of active baker's yeast can contain billions of living cells. Each microscopic organism consumes natural sugars from the dough and quietly releases carbon dioxide. Repeating the same process discovered by ancient Egyptian bakers thousands of years ago. It is extraordinary to think that every slice of bread connects us to one of nature's oldest partnerships. Humans provide the flour and water. Yeast does the invisible work. Together, they create the soft, airy bread that has nourished civilizations for thousands of years. It is extraordinary to think that every slice of bread connects us to one of nature's oldest partnerships. Humans provide the flour and water. Yeast does the invisible work. Together, they create the soft, airy bread that has nourished civilizations for thousands of years. Bread has traveled farther than almost any other food on Earth. It crossed deserts with caravans, sailed across oceans on wooden ships, and fed explorers, soldiers, farmers, and families. Every civilization adapted bread to its own culture, yet the tiny holes inside remained remarkably familiar. Across thousands of years, languages, and continents, billions of tiny bubbles have quietly connected humanity through one simple food. Every loaf carries the same ancient secret. Air, trapped by dough, transformed by heat, and preserved forever as the tiny holes we see today. Across thousands of years, languages, and continents, billions of tiny bubbles have quietly connected humanity through one simple food. Every loaf carries the same ancient secret. Air, trapped by dough, transformed by heat, and preserved forever as the tiny holes we see today. The next time you hold a slice of bread, take a closer look at the tiny holes inside. They are far more than simple air pockets. They are the visible evidence of billions of microscopic living cells, thousands of years of human discovery, and one remarkable partnership between nature and civilization. What began as wild grass gathered by prehistoric hunter-gatherers became one of humanity's greatest inventions. Through patience, curiosity, and countless generations of bakers, a humble mixture of flour and water evolved into the bread that now feeds billions of people around the world. So, the answer to our question is beautifully simple. Bread has holes because living yeast creates tiny bubbles of carbon dioxide. Gluten traps them, and heat preserves their shape forever. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories are hidden inside the foods we eat every single day. For much of human history, bread was far more than food. It was wealth you could eat. The amount and quality of bread on a family's table often revealed their social status. To own fine white bread was a luxury reserved for the wealthy, while darker, coarse loaves were the daily meal of ordinary people. Producing white flour required repeated grinding and careful sifting, making it far more expensive than whole grain flour. Every loaf demanded extra labor, better equipment, and more grain. As a result, white bread gradually became a symbol of privilege, power, and prosperity throughout Europe. Bread had become more than nourishment. It had become a visible sign of class. At a single dinner table, the color of your bread could quietly reveal where you stood in society, long before anyone spoke a single word. Bread became so important that entire governments worried about its price. In many European cities, a sudden shortage of bread could trigger fear, panic, and unrest within days. Keeping bread affordable wasn't simply an economic issue. It was essential for maintaining public order. When harvests failed because of drought, floods, or harsh winters, wheat became scarce and flour prices soared. Bakers struggled to produce enough loaves, while ordinary families found themselves unable to buy the food they depended on every single day. History records countless moments when long lines formed outside bakeries before sunrise. Hungry crowds waited for hours, hoping there would still be bread left when it was finally their turn. Sometimes there wasn't, and that disappointment could quickly turn into anger. Sometimes a shortage of bread changed the course of history itself. When people could no longer afford the food they depended on every day, frustration spread quickly through entire cities. Empty stomachs often became the spark that ignited social unrest on an enormous scale. One of the most famous examples occurred in France during the late 18th century. Years of poor harvests, rising flour prices, and severe food shortages left many families struggling to survive. Bread became increasingly scarce, while anger toward the ruling class continued to grow. Although many factors led to the French Revolution, the struggle to obtain affordable bread became one of its most powerful symbols. In the end, a simple loaf represented far more than food. It represented justice, survival, and the hope for a better future. When bread disappeared from bakery shelves, desperation often replaced patience. Across Europe, history records moments when hungry crowds stormed bakeries, seized flour, or demanded that bread be sold at fair prices. These events became known as bread riots, powerful reminders that food can shape the fate of nations. To the people involved, these were not simply protests. Parents feared for their children, workers worried about feeding their families, and bakers struggled with soaring flour costs. For many, securing a single loaf of bread meant the difference between eating and going hungry. These crises forced governments to rethink how food should be produced, transported, and distributed. In many places, protecting the bread supply became a matter of national stability. A simple loaf had become one of society's most important responsibilities. Everything changed with the arrival of the Industrial Revolution. Machines that could grind grain faster and more efficiently replaced many traditional mills. What once took days of hard labor could now be completed in just hours, making flour more plentiful than ever before. Steam-powered mills, improved transportation, and large commercial bakeries transformed bread from a handmade craft into a product that could feed rapidly growing cities. Fresh loaves became more affordable, more consistent, and available to far more people than in previous centuries. For the first time in history, bread was no longer reserved by geography or social class. Technology had changed its future forever. A food once shaped entirely by human hands was now entering the age of machines, bringing bread to millions of new tables around the world. For thousands of years, bakers relied on naturally fermented dough passed down from one batch to the next. But during the 19th century, scientists learned how to isolate and cultivate pure baker's yeast. This breakthrough made bread making faster, more predictable, and far easier to repeat. Instead of waiting for wild yeast from the surrounding air, bakers could now purchase carefully prepared yeast with consistent performance. Every batch of dough rose more reliably, allowing bakeries to produce thousands of loaves with nearly identical quality every single day. Although commercial yeast transformed the baking industry, many artisan bakers continued preserving their traditional sourdough starters. Today, both methods still exist side by side, one built for efficiency, the other for patience, complexity, and centuries of living tradition. Walk into almost any supermarket today, and you'll find shelves filled with perfectly shaped loaves. Their slices are nearly identical. Their texture is soft, and every package looks remarkably consistent. Yet, artisan bread often appears completely different, with irregular shapes and dramatic open holes. The difference begins long before baking. Commercial bread is designed for speed, consistency, and long shelf life. Artisan bread, on the other hand, often ferments slowly by hand, allowing time, wild yeast, and careful craftsmanship to shape every loaf into something unique. Neither style is necessarily better. They simply reflect different priorities. One feeds millions efficiently every day. The other preserves centuries of traditional baking techniques. Together, they remind us that bread is both an everyday necessity and a timeless craft. Here's one final surprise. Many people believe that the perfect loaf should have the largest holes possible. In reality, that's not true. The ideal crumb depends entirely on the type of bread. Bigger holes don't automatically mean better bread. A rustic sourdough is celebrated for its large, irregular openings because they create a light texture and complex bite. But for sandwich bread, those same giant holes would be a problem. Butter, peanut butter, or jam would simply fall straight through the slices. So the tiny holes inside bread are never accidents. Every bubble reflects a carefully balanced combination of flour, water, yeast, gluten, fermentation, temperature, and baking. Even the smallest detail inside a loaf tells the story of countless invisible decisions. Think about the incredible journey hidden inside a single slice of bread. It began over 14,000 years ago, when prehistoric people gathered wild grasses by hand. Through countless discoveries, generations of bakers, and centuries of innovation, that simple idea became one of humanity's greatest achievements. Every loaf carries pieces of our shared history. Ancient Egyptian ovens, Roman bakeries, medieval villages, scientific laboratories, industrial mills, and modern kitchens are all connected by the same timeless process. Bread is far more than food. It is a living thread woven through civilization itself. Perhaps that is why bread feels so familiar, no matter where we live. Across cultures, languages, and generations, people continue breaking bread together. In one simple loaf, we can still taste thousands of years of human curiosity, perseverance, and shared experience. The next time you enjoy a simple slice of bread, pause for just a moment. Hidden within its tiny holes is a story that began more than 14,000 years ago. Few everyday foods carry such an extraordinary journey through history, science, and human civilization. From wild grasses gathered by prehistoric families to modern bakeries serving millions every day, bread has remained one of humanity's most faithful companions. It has survived empires, revolutions, scientific discoveries, and technological change. Yet its remarkable secret has always remained the same. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden history of bread. If you enjoyed discovering the extraordinary stories behind everyday things, don't forget to subscribe and join us again on Everyday Origins, where the ordinary always has an extraordinary beginning.